Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we're going to be talking about the Sega CD. I don't know if you remember it. I didn't. Rob definitely does. I know.
Well, I barely had any. We didn't have a lot of games for it, so but I did have it, and I do kind of vaguely remember it.
Yes, a lot of Sega things seem to be lost to time these days, and which is really unfortunate because Sega. They pretty much make specifically just games and license IPs now, and they make very few games, if any.
No, they still make a decent amount.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, like a lot of stuff that you would like not expect, like they still make some Sonic games and stuff, but like a lot of it is like stuff like the Total War series is made by Sega. Like
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a strategy game on PC.
Huh.
Well, I don't think they made the original ones, but they like bought it or whatever, and now make the new ones.
I see. I mean, every now and then I only pretty much see them with anything Sonic related that they license.
Yeah.
Like the
Well, obviously Sonic is still like their big bread and butter, obviously.
Of course. But I don't really see or hear too much about Sega these days, which is really sad.
Yeah.
They haven't.
I mean, they kind of faded into the background a little bit. They
did once the console wars started. They pretty much they had the Dreamcast, which I'm sure we'll talk about in another episode. Which the Dreamcast was probably the best damn machine that.
It was so awesome. The Dreamcast was amazing. It was a real shame that was the console that they failed on because it was a really good console. It just they couldn't get enough third party support for it, and there was just not enough games for it.
It was also just too far ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And then once the console wars caught up to what Sega Dreamcast could do, it had already been obsolete by that point, or it was basically on its way out. So it was really just ingenuity too early. It was basically like if James Cameron released Avatar like 20 years before he did because he just got impatient. And I'm sure Avatar wouldn't have done that well if he did do that and if he released it in haste.
Yeah.
But he made it when he made it because the technology was there, and fortunately he had the time and the money to sit on it, where Sega was not so lucky.
Yeah. I mean, they've also made other stupid mistakes with their product lines and stuff, and which is what obviously we're going to talk about. Like they had a lot of useless peripherals for the Sega Genesis, and then they had the Sega 32X or whatever, which just failed miserably. And then the Sega Saturn came out, and that was an actually pretty decent console, had okay graphics, but it the other consoles were ahead of it. The PlayStation was coming out, and that was way ahead of the Saturn. So then they reinvested all their stuff into making the Dreamcast, and it was such a good console, and it just but they had wasted so much time and money on crappy consoles, including partially the Sega CD. They had some good games for it. Sonic CD is often said to want to be one of the definitive Sonic games, one of the best ones, but also had a lot of stupid games, these stupid gimmicky games. That just kind of they were all full motion video. It was all just You know, they were trying to like make it seem like, oh, you're playing a movie, you know, but a lot of them were kind of not that good. You know, it was they were like boring point and clicks things, and they just weren't, you know, really. They didn't really work on console. They were like they should have been like more like PC games.
Right, and FMV. I mean, FMVs, which I'm sure we'll also talk about at another time too in more detail. But FMVs really set the stage for a lot of like the more cinematic video games that we have now.
Yeah,
and the technology's caught up to where it could actually be what it was meant to be.
Yeah,
because back then it just really. You got lucky if you could get anything remotely playable out of it, or you get something like a Night Trap, which we've talked about before. But long story short, that's what we'll be getting. Things like this is what we'll be getting into today. Let me just give our quick little spiel before we can really get going and let it rip. We are Why Does This Exist? We're a podcast about the very weirdest things happening in pop culture, whether that be a video game console like we are speaking about today, a movie like Shrek that we spoke about last time, any strange albums or music like Metallica's Saint Anger, which is a pretty bad album, but not as bad as Lulu, which we will only review, Lou, for $10,000 on our Patreon, which is at patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. So if you really hate our guts, you'll give us $10,000 to put ourselves through this torture and listen to this album. But you can also find us on social media. You can find us on Twitter, twitter.com/WDTEpod. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/whydoesthisexistpod. And you can also email us for your suggestions and what you think is cool, what you think is bad, if you want to just be in private or you want to give us a tip on something else weird to talk about. You can do that at whydoesthisexistshow@gmail.com. By the way, going back to the Patreon thing, it's not only $10,000. We have other cool things on there too that you could just join up for as little as $1, and we'll let you into the Discord server, and you can talk to us and have a good time and hang out, and you can berate us in the town square, and then you can go ahead and do whatever you want to do for $1. And we have some other cool tiers too. But you can also check out our episodes and more at whydoesthisexistpod.com. We've also got some articles. We should be having another article coming up in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned and stay on there. You can also find us on very many channels. That includes YouTube, where we encourage you to like, share, and subscribe our stuff. And please leave a comment and let us know how you think we're doing. Good, bad, it doesn't even matter. Dislikes, you don't even register with the general public for the most part anymore. Unless you get like a toolbar to put it back in. I don't care. You could dislike this all you want. It makes no difference. It'll get our stuff shown to more people. Even if it's the dregs of society. You can also find us on Spreaker, our new home, Spreaker. That's Spreaker.com/show/whydoesthisexist. You can find us there. I love this platform already. We've only been using it a couple of weeks. I don't have enough good things to say about it. You can tag every episode. It's cheaper than Podbean, and it's a whole lot better. And they actually do calculate your monetization, and they even give you little tips on how you can do better to get the most out of your monetization dollars. So far, they've been pretty good. They've got really good customer service, and it's no wonder why they're one of the better podcasting platforms. Unlike the degenerates at Podbean, whom we no longer have a deal with. They, in fact, ruined the deal. It's almost as if we were pigeons and somebody just ran us over with a car and was trying to get us to get out of the way. It's almost
we have no deal.
We have no deal with Podbean. We're actually trying to dispute these human beings, if you could call them that. We're actually trying to get out of our deal with them right now. We've technically canceled it so that they will never get our money ever again. But we're also trying to figure something out with the credit card companies. It's a lot of BS. Long story short, they pretend to not have a refund policy, and they really don't. But the only way that you could find out about actually getting a refund is you have to either A, read the very, very, very fine print, or two, you have to bother them and contact support and tell them, hey, can you please refund me for this? I don't want to use your stuff anymore. And they're just like, oh, well, you can't do it unless it's after the 7-day trial. And it's like, but the 7-day trial is a free trial. So you technically aren't supposed to get any money in that time. So what kind of scam are you trying to pull? Not that they are a scam, but they're certainly not a platform that I would consider using ever again. So
well said.
So to sum it up, Spreaker good, Podbean bad. We like Spreaker. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Pandora, TuneIn, Alexa, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Listen Notes, and Stitcher. That's the news. Here's the weather. You're about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. Let's get on with the goddamn show. Oh, by the way, we are going to try doing some video stuff on YouTube as well. I've got a neat mask that I'll be wearing, and you have picked a costume of sorts that you will also be presenting, because we don't need people to know exactly what we look like. We're not that important to anybody except possibly our immediate families. There's no reason for it, so we're going to be putting on some interesting disguises, if you will, and we'll be trying out some video stuff for YouTube. So stay tuned, everybody. All right, let's talk about the Sega CD.
So, as we said before, in the 90s, Sega was making a lot of like stupid peripherals and like useless consoles for their existing consoles. One of them being the Sega CD. Which basically was just a CD player that's like literally attached to the Sega Genesis. And, you know, being a CD, it was able to do, you know, more things with, especially with full motion video, better sound quality on music and stuff like that. And this was like kind of like the time that consoles were starting to move towards CDs because they were cheaper to make. And, you know, it wasn't as fast load times as it was with cartridges, but you know, you could fit more data on them, and they were just cheaper to make, and you know, I don't know, you could have better music and better video quality with CDs than cartridges at the time. So a lot of consoles started kind of moving towards this, and of course that means everybody kind of had to throw their hat in the ring, and Sega did with the Sega CD. The big selling point with the CD was that it was, like I said before, the full motion video, which was that was like kind of like a gimmick that came out around the same time, where you could have like real actors and live action like videos as like cutscenes, and oftentimes also part of gameplay too.
Right, because they had added an additional CPU and custom graphics chip.
Right,
which was largely unheard of at the time.
Yeah,
they had partnered with JVC to design the Sega CD, which also was like, you know, a collaboration that wasn't really a thing. Like, you wouldn't think. I mean, now of course now like you could see it happening, but like way back when in like the early '90s, late '80s, that it was just largely unheard of. Where it was like, hey, we're a video game console. Everybody else does cartridges. Why don't we work with a big company that makes a bunch of like sound systems and tape things and like DVD players and CD players and stuff like that. It wasn't really heard of, and it was like let's partner with them to release so that they could help design a console that plays CDs. Like, you wouldn't even think to do that. I mean, of course, we then got the PS1 and the PS2, but this was pretty much the precursor to where things would go now. Because now, now you're just downloading things from the cloud, but you're even still going out and if you're buying the physical video game, you're buying a CD unless you have a Switch.
Yeah. Well, even the Switch doesn't. It has cartridges, but like I said, most consoles are going digital now because, but a lot of people like to still have the physical games because then it's like they have like, something to collect. I know. So I don't know, it's, CDs are starting to kind of go away with digital, but, they're still kind of like also, I don't think they're going to go away yet just because people like that collection ability. But anyway, back to like the Sega CD specifically. And what I was saying, with the full motion video, so a lot of games were having it. And this was like the thing you had, like, the CDI, the Philips CDI, which was, of course, home to the terrible Zelda games. Mm-hmm. So everybody was kind of doing this full motion video thing. Now, some did it really good and some did it really poorly. I will say one game that I think they did an amazing job with, and often at times this is like considered the best Sega CD game, of course, is Sonic CD. And, besides being a really good Sonic game, it also had the full motion video, and it was actually a really well done animation, like for the cutscenes. Like it was almost like watching like an anime or something like that.
Yes.
And the soundtrack was actually quite good too. The music for it. So that was kind of like a really big shift for Sonic, because up until that point, you had only the Sega Genesis games, which the soundtracks were pretty good for, but they were like still kind of that like chunky, like 16-bit Sega sound. Whereas Sonic CD had like Sonic Boom, which was like a real song. So that was kind of like blew people out of the water a little bit when it first came out. Unfortunately, like I said, a lot of the games were just not that level, like not even close to that level. There were some that were good like that, but most of them were kind of like really poorly done, like with, like Z-list celebrities pretty much playing the characters, and even if that, and it's really cheesy and really poorly written, and the video was always very grainy on a lot of those things. Sure. Like it was like...
Such as, especially in like Night Trap and things like that, which Night Trap talked about before.
Yeah, Night Trap we had mentioned on one of our, I believe the survival horror episode.
Yes.
Which, that was, and even then though, like the PC version of Night Trap was like way beyond like the Sega CD version. It was just like, the console CD technology just wasn't as good as PC, like, which, that is pretty much like still holds true today, that the PC is always like ahead of the consoles in terms of like what kind of technology it has in it, because the technology just moves so fast that by the time consoles are done being developed, the stuff that like the chips that are in them are already obsolete. So, whereas the PC you could just constantly, buy new parts for and upgrade. So, the Sega CD games that were ports from like, other systems or PC were oftentimes not quite as good as their counterparts, just because the Sega CD just didn't have as much of that, of the newer technology. And it was kind of still working off of the Genesis's, level, processor and all that.
Sure. I mean, another thing that I wanted to touch on was that you also got a tremendous amount of space by using a CD. So that was another part of the appeal to it also. For more than 320 times more space than the Genesis cartridge would.
Well, also, you look at the friggin' boxes that the Genesis cartridges came in. They're friggin' like gigantic. Yeah. They were like these giant plastic boxes that were just huge. And it was so like obviously having just the jewel cases,
Right, because like the box was just like 99% packaging and 1% cartridge. So it was like, why would you even do all this?
Yeah. But you know what? If I remember correctly, some of the Sega CD like cases were also quite large. They weren't like, I guess like they were like almost like a little book kind of, I don't know if they were trying to like just make it like, fancy instead of just having like a regular ass jewel case. But I'm pretty sure they also had games that were just came in like regular ass jewel cases like that, an audio CD would come in. If I remember correctly, it was a long time ago. And like I said, I don't even remember if I have any of the games left over.
I remember they were like maybe 1.5 times a regular like jewel case.
Yeah, they were like a little fatter and like taller, you know, like it was like, yeah.
I don't know if the CDs. I don't think the CDs were any bigger than normal CDs.
No, they were regular size CDs. It was just the jewel case they came in. They made friggin' huge.
I guess they just want. Well, I remember the booklet was fairly large.
Yeah.
So maybe that's probably it. They probably just like had to make the jewel case so that they could fit the booklet. Although I don't know why you wouldn't just say, why don't we just make a smaller booklet like we have on regular CDs? But I don't know. I guess you just wanted to. I guess they just wanted to be a little bit different and be a little more distinguished, so that nobody like accidentally buys a $50 thing, assuming it's going to play music. Not that I think any parent. Well, I mean, you know what? There's several billion people on this earth. I'm pretty sure some of them are stupid enough to walk in and say, "Oh, Sega. Oh, let me just buy the album."
Well, there were actually, we talked about this a little bit on our CD episode, but like certain PlayStation games, if you put the game into a CD player, you could actually listen to the soundtrack of the game.
Yes, like the Twisted Metal games.
Right. And
But this was before. But this was before that.
Yeah, that's true.
Time you couldn't do it, but I'm just saying, like, you walk in and you see a Sega CD game and you're like, oh, I'm in the video game section. Yeah, I'm gonna buy this album.
You know, I wonder if this would be a good experiment to actually see if you took a Sega CD. I wish I knew where mine were. I haven't seen them in like years, so I have no idea what I did with them. They're probably lost or thrown out at this point. But it would be interesting to see, like, if you actually put a Sega CD game in a CD player, if you could listen to the music tracks. Because if you think about it, like, the tracks, like, it's regular tracks, like a regular CD, technically. It's just that, like, instead of, like, music, it's data. So, but the music is stored somewhere on that CD also, you know? So
Right.
I guess, theoretically, you might be able to listen to the music.
Yeah, there'd be a good chance. I thought
You'd have to just scroll through tracks. I don't know.
I thought your experiment was going to be, let's put a bunch of Sega CDs on, like, in the music section of some, like,
Oh, no.
and see how many people, like, think that it's a real album.
Yeah, just start picking. Well, I mean, now they might not because Sega CD was like, you know, we're talking about almost 30 years ago. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you'd still find somebody.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, more people might like be like, "Oh, is this like a music CD?" Because especially if it's like a young kid, like a friggin' like Zoomer or something that comes in that's never seen a Sega CD in their life and didn't know, and they think it's just some like friggin' record label or something. You know, oh, I didn't know Sega made albums. Like, you know.
Yeah. Well, this reminds me of an interview that James Hetfield did. I think when he was on like the Joe Rogan Experience, like many years ago. I think about like 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
They were talking about like the vinyl comeback and James said that like one day he came home and his kids had like they had gone to like an Urban Outfitters or something and they bought like and they bought like a turntable.
Yeah.
You know, they bought like a record player and they were listening to like some new whatever album was on it, like whatever was new or whatever. And he came home and he was just like, "Hey, what do you guys got there?" And they were like, "Dad, it's this awesome new thing. Like it's a record, like it plays records and these things are made of wax and it's so cool. You just put a needle on it." And he's like, "Yeah, we had those. Like like my albums are on them." And they were like. And they were just like, whatever, Dad. Like that's like what a bullshit artist. And he was like, I can go get them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you know,
so I'm sure
today,
you'd find,
might not know. Yeah.
I'm sure you'd find some kids. But anyway, another cool thing about the Sega CD was that you could stack and like you could do. There was like a hat on a hat thing, so like you could actually like stack the Model 1 Genesis and the Model 2. You can stack the Sega CD onto a Sega Genesis, and you'd be able to play both consoles.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's how it was. You know, that's how it was designed.
Yeah.
Basically. So
but it was an interesting idea.
Yeah.
And nobody's really been able to replicate anything like that since. I know they tried. Like the Nintendo 64 was originally going to get a similar type of add-on.
Yes.
You'd be able to play CDs. I can't remember if we talked about this on the Banjo-Kazooie episode.
I don't think we did.
I don't know. I mean, that was a year ago. Good God. We're really doing this.
Really? It was a whole year? Jeez.
Yeah, episode 2. We're almost 50 episodes deep in this thing. It's pretty easy. But the Nintendo 64 was originally supposed to get a CD bottom that you could stack on it, and you could plug into it, and you'd be able to get Nintendo like games that would work with the N64 in the CD portion that would, update the graphics and what have you. And I was speaking to my fiance about this earlier. I don't remember what happened, but I don't remember if they lost the license or if the deal fell through with whoever was developing the CD.
Yes,
I think it was that.
Yes,
but it fell through, and I think Sony bought that or bought the patent.
Sony was actually working on. They were working on it, and they.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay,
yes, and they were working with Nintendo to make a CD system or disk drive, and then the deal fell through, whatever, and basically Sony just built off that technology to make the PlayStation 1.
That's right. Okay, and then the console wars began.
Well, I mean, they did begin before that with, the console war was, of course, Nintendo and Sega were competed for a while. And then all these other, the 3DO and the Atari Lynx and all these other consoles that were just not as good. But they tried to compete with Nintendo. Nintendo and Sega were really the forefront of that until the PlayStation came along.
I totally forgot about the 3DO.
Yeah, there was so many weird consoles like that, like the what is it, the TurboGrafx 16, there was all these different little consoles that were trying to compete with Nintendo and Sega and just weren't at that level, or at least not in America. I think in Japan there was more competition from some of the smaller companies, but really, it was still Nintendo versus Sega until Sony came along with the PlayStation.
Wow. So this is interesting, speaking about the development of the Sega CD. Mm-hmm. Sega didn't want anything leaking out when they were designing the Sega CD with JVC. So regular Sega, Sega's a Japanese company, I believe.
Yes, they are.
They refused to speak with Sega of America until the project was complete. So Sega of America was assembling parts from dummy units to get a functioning unit. And yeah, they were so nervous that there was going to be a leak and then somebody else was going to build it and swallow and steal their thunder Big Sega refused to tell little baby Sega about it. It was almost like a big brother just not letting the little brother play with his toys.
That's
hilarious, because it's hilarious. It's part of your company. That's pretty that. I mean, I guess that could maybe speak to what the political climate was within that company. Well,
I think a lot of Japanese companies are kind of like that with their, the Japanese division and the American division. Usually, the Japanese division always takes precedence and is the more powerful part of it. I
could see
Nintendo of America answers to Nintendo of Japan. They kind of have to be subordinate to Nintendo of Japan because they're the main, the main office, I guess. I don't know what you would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it goes back to Big Brother, Little Brother.
Yeah, basically like that, yeah.
Except in this case, Little Brother never really starts working out and hits the gym and beats up Big Brother. It just they just can't get. I don't know. They just kind of stay in their own lanes, and they just kind of splinter off, and I don't know if they talk to each other or not anymore. Maybe they send Christmas cards to each other now. I have no idea how it works. Mom and Dad can't be too pleased.
Oh, I'm sure,
Big Daddy Sega
Oh, God.
and Mama Sega are not very happy because their sons just can't get along.
Yeah. Sega Japan and Sega America.
Well, I mean, Sega America might be adopted, so that would make sense.
And I guess Sonic Team is like the friggin' Sega of Japan's like parasitic twin or something. Like that's like attached, parasitic attached twin.
Well, if we want to turn this into a Harry Potter, like,
oh my God.
I would say Sonic is. I would say the Sonic team is somehow Harry Potter in all of this because they're the boy who lived. Sega.
Well, I mean, true, but I mean, Sega is still there. They're just, they're just a little different than they used to be. They're not like a big contender anymore as much.
No, not so much. I guess Big Sega would be more of Dumbledore at this point, but hopefully nobody comes around. Hopefully they don't have to sacrifice themselves for Sonic, and they get offed or purchased by someone.
Yeah. I wonder if Sega will ever try to like go back into the console game.
I don't know.
If they're just done forever.
I think they could give it another whirl and try.
I think they still make like arcade cabinets and stuff in Japan.
They do. I don't know if they could make another. I mean, I think that they could if they really wanted to, but I feel like they're not gonna.
Yeah.
Or at least not for a long time. Like maybe they're just like biding their time, and then they'll just like wait for the right moment and then make a new console. But like, who really knows?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be
nice to see one. Maybe
they're probably like fine with just like where they are now because like they can make games. They don't really. It's not as much overhead, I guess, trying to make a console and like sell a console.
Right? Unless they're so bitter, worry about it. Unless they're so bitter about the Dreamcast that they're just like waiting to they're just waiting to strike. And
I don't think they. I don't think they are.
I don't.
They make so much money from like being on like PC now, and like they worked with Nintendo and made like Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, which made them like a huge amount of money. The former rivals making a game, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, we never thought this would happen," and everyone bought it. Like, right. Sonic's in Smash Brothers now, so.
No, they make way more money from like licensing and everything that I feel there's no reason for them to even do it. Like they're probably wow, this is so much easier. Like let's just do that.
Yeah.
But I can
and I think they work pretty close.
I can dream.
They work pretty close with Nintendo now. Like the Sega Genesis, like the Nintendo Switch Online, they just released like a whole Sega Genesis platform to play all the old Genesis games. So, it's like Sega's like allowing Nintendo to just like do their thing with it, which is a really cool thing.
Right. So unless they did like a collaboration with like Nintendo to like make a new like super console, I can't. That
would be an interesting thing.
I mean, I would like to see that, but that would be like more of a pipe dream right now. But it's plausible. It's very plausible.
Yeah.
Alrighty, but the price point on this thing is actually, well, I don't know what the price point exactly is for the Sega CD. Let me take a look here. I've got the price charting for. I mean, they did make a pretty decent sized library. It looks like down here. There's what do we have in total? About. Between America, Brazil, between America, the PAL, which was just like Europe, Australia,
the PAL countries,
Japan, the PAL. I mean, there's a good string of titles. There's a lot actually that were released on the Sega CD.
Yeah, a lot of them also were they were ports of Sega Genesis games. that I think had some better graphics and better like sounds and stuff like that. Because I remember I had, I believe, Echo the Dolphin.
That game is very weird.
Yes, it was a very weird game, but it was on the Sega CD version. I think it was a little bit more like the graphics were better and like the sounds were better. The music was like a little bit higher quality. I remember I also had like Earthworm Jim Special Edition, which was better than the the Earthworm Jim that came out on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo. Like it was just high, like had like new stuff, like cut content, I guess, from the first Earthworm Jim, and at like new levels and better graphics and better sound design or whatever. Like I said, with Echo.
Right.
So there was there was some of like the advantage of it, because you could basically, it's what we would call maybe a remaster today. They could like port these like Sega Genesis games to the CD and make it like slightly better, a little bit better graphics and better sound and stuff. And I think people kind of like that.
I think so. I mean, I like to see it when they do when they re-release it to the new to the next gen consoles. I've really enjoyed playing the BioShock trilogy on the Switch. It actually moves very smoothly. I haven't yet played Infinite, which is my favorite one, but I've really enjoyed the experience just on the Switch. Like there's not that there was any issues playing it on the 360. Like it's still like everything still ran pretty well over there, but for whatever reason I enjoy it more playing it on the Switch. But yeah, a total of 205 titles are listed here on Wikipedia. 57 released in Japan, only in Japan. 39 were exclusive to North America, and Europe didn't get that much love. There were only 5 Europe exclusive games, and there were a bunch of games that were released for all 3.
Yeah,
actually, one of the exclusive ones, which I think is interesting, was a Three Ninjas one. The Three Ninjas Kick Back, which I never played. I think I've only played the Sonic Sega CD game.
Real Sonic CD.
Yeah, I only played Sonic CD. I don't know if I played Batman Forever on it. If there was a Batman Forever, maybe it wasn't on that one. Anyway,
Batman Returns.
Yes, Batman Returns. I've barely played any games on this thing.
Yeah, I've played some. I don't remember them as well as I used to, but I remember I specifically had obviously Sonic CD. I mentioned Echo the Dolphin, Earthworm Jim. I had a wrestling game. It was called WWF Rage in the Cage, and that was actually a pretty good game.
Really?
It was pretty fun to play. Yeah, it was actually pretty fun.
Were there FMVs on that?
No, it was more of like Mortal Kombat, motion captured, kind of like people.
Oh, that's interesting.
I guess there was some FMV clips also too. But it was the gameplay itself was more like the motion captured kind of thing.
Okay, kind of similar to WWF WrestleMania.
Yeah, except a little bit better quality, I guess. Again, because it's on the CD,
Right. Cool.
Yeah, and it was cool because you could actually it wasn't just on one plane like a regular fighting game. You could move back and forth. It was kind of like an isometric ring, and you could move back and forth. You could climb obviously it's Rage in the Cage, so cage matches were the specific kind of feature of it. And you could climb out of the cage and stuff, or climb to the top and jump off. It was actually a pretty good wrestling game for the time period, Because a lot of the wrestling games are just trying to be fighting games, basically. And this was actually almost more of a wrestling game that you would see later on, on the N64 or something.
I bet you that's a forgotten one for sure.
Yeah.
There was apparently one also called WWF Mania Tour, but I'm not, that might have been the Japan. No, I'm sorry. That might have been the Japanese name for it because it's got the J here. there's like it seems like demand has actually been increasing for these things over the last decade too. All of the Sega CD games. So a total was 165 games on this price listing according to pricecharting.com. But if you see here, it like this has gone up a lot for the Sega CD itself. Like in 2008, it was about like on average it's like $6 the Sega CD console.
How much was it?
For an average loose priced, the average loose price of all licensed non-variant games for a Sega CD, on average the average was about $7. The median was $3.25 in 2008, and it's actually
used then obviously.
Shot up to the average. Yeah, to the average price is now like $50.
Wow.
Yeah, the median is 26.
I think
pretty big. That's like a pretty big growth over like the last like 10 or so years.
Also, I mean, the demand has gone up because the nostalgia craze has kind of only grown in the last 10 years.
Sure.
You know? You go back to the early 2000s and there were collectors out there, but they were like very like specific. Like you had a few people doing it, like James Rolfe, like he was a collector, you know, the angry video game nerd, before like really it became like a super popular thing to do, you know. And then like kind of like thanks to him, you know, AVGN and like other people that were doing reviews of old games, it kind of blew up the collecting scene. And now like, you know, stuff that was so cheap to find at yard sales and flea markets, 20 years ago is now like way more money, you know, and people are selling it on eBay for like, $50 to $100 for like used, like out of package, you know. If you get like one that's like in package, it's like $100 to $200 sometimes. And then like sealed stuff is going for like, depending on the game, could like thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Check this out. So the most expensive Sega CD game is a game called Keo Flying Squadron.
Yeah.
Which loose by itself is $1,993.30.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so if you've got a Keo Flying Squadron on your hands, like even if it's in craptacular condition, you could still make a G off of this thing. I don't know what CIB is, but that's almost $3,000 that you could get it for, $28.99.95, and new, like brand new factory sealed of Keo Flying Squadron goes for $5,600. That's a whopping five and a half like G's right in your pocket. So if you're sitting on some of these things, you should probably flip them now, and or at least sell half and then see what happens with the other ones, because that value is probably only going to continue to climb over time.
Yeah,
but it's just it's just crazy what you can get for some of these things.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of glad that a lot of like these companies are like kind of like releasing, like Nintendo, is like, obviously the biggest one doing this right now, but some other companies are like releasing their older games, like re-releasing them or remastering them. Nintendo's kind of doing it now with like I said before, the Nintendo Switch Online, which has, they started off with Super Nintendo, now they're doing N64 games as well. And the Sega Genesis. So it's kind of nice that they're doing it, because it's so hard to be a collector now because it's so expensive, sometimes you like want to play the old games and not have to pay like an arm and a leg to do it. And now it's, Nintendo's starting to catch on to that a little bit, I think. And a lot of the other companies are doing it because people are like, we're emulating it for so long. Like the demand is still there. They want to play these games. So,
right.
But they don't want to have to spend $1,000 in trying to buy them on, eBay or something.
Right. It's a great business opportunity. And on top of that, because all of it's not like they're like it's not like they're remaking the games and their cartridges back out in the world. Like they're just putting them on the console itself that you're buying. So that also doesn't hurt the value of the games themselves. So like it's something where somebody who really wants to play the games can go ahead and do that, and like regardless of whether they're a collector or not, and the collectors have nothing to complain about because those games are still like not being flooded into the market as physical games. It's just sure it's like a new console, and like sure as a collector you could buy those up if you want to, but also as a collector you could you can also play those games without like risking opening up that box one more time, or opening up the box at all, which you're not going to do if you're a collector. Original like the Sega CD Model 1 console is going for like just a little under $400 loose.
That's a lot.
Yeah, $372.50 loose. New is going for $1679, so it's going for quite a bit. The Model 2 is less expensive, but still like will fetch you something nice. Loose, it's going for about $171, and CIB is complete in box.
Yes.
Yeah, CIB is like $400. New is $720. So if you were if you wanted to get one of these, a cheaper option is obviously the Model 2. But perhaps at some point they'll put out a Sega CD remake.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they already did like the Sega,
they did the Genesis, I think.
Right, yeah, the Genesis like mini console. So maybe the problem is that I don't think there's enough demand with a lot of the CD games. Like obviously there's Sonic CD, but they've already re-released that on like PC and everything else. So if you want to play Sonic CD, you can buy it. And then most of the other games are like just the good ones are remakes of Genesis games, and the bad ones no one wants to play anyway. I mean, I guess maybe for like nostalgia's sake, or like I'm pretty sure I don't know if it was for the Sega CD or the Sega Saturn, but I remember like Street Fighter the movie, the video game.
Oh yeah, that's not that very good.
It was like who wants to play that? Like you just play friggin' Street Fighter. That one was not good. And it was like all the movie characters. I guess the funniest thing is that you get to play as Raul Julia, fly across as friggin' doing the M. Bison moves.
I guess as Papa Adams just like cleaning house is funny.
Yeah.
I just don't understand the point. There's also something called the Sega CD Action System, which I don't really know what the heck that is. I'm just looking.
I've never even heard of that.
I'm still looking at the price charts. It's not very expensive. It's like it's like somewhere in the middle of this like thing. It's like 118 new and about 342. I'm 342 brand new, like complete. It's only like $189. So there's not really it doesn't seem like it did very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this box that I'm seeing is like complete with the Tomcat Alley game. Oh boy, that's a game I've never heard of.
Tomcat Alley. That sounds like one of those fucking Atari porn games. Oh. I don't even know. It's got like some jet planes on it for what it's worth on the box, but I don't know what an action system is. Who cares? I don't. So I'm just looking at Wikipedia here, and I also noticed that there was actually different like third-party models that weren't made by Sega or JVC.
That's weird.
There was the Victor Wonder Mega. Yeah, which was like a standalone console that was, I guess, licensed by Sega to play Genesis games and CD games. And then there was also the Pioneer Laser Active, which looks like it only plays Sega CD games. It doesn't have like a console or a cartridge port. It looks like
a cross between. It looks like a cross between an.
It's like a freaking VCR.
Yeah, it looks like a cross between an Xbox and a VCR.
Yeah,
weird. I mean, the Victor Mega looks like it's like some kind of like futuristic weapon.
Yeah, the original one, and then the second one kind of looks like a knockoff, like looks something you would find in like an Asian market or something that is like pretending to be a PlayStation, but it's really just a bunch of like 8-bit freaking Nintendo games loaded onto it. You know, have you
Yeah.
ever seen those like bootleg consoles or whatever?
Oh,
It's like
I
over
have.
800 games. It's like
Yeah,
they're the worst games ever.
They have them at like all of the shops. They have it in like all of the like you'd find it in all of the like I Love New York or like tourist trap
Yeah.
stores. They always
Yeah.
have. They without fail they'd always have a knockoff console of like whatever the hot one it was at the time. Like I remember I ran into so many boy games, which contrary to popular belief is not a sex thing, although it probably could be. It was just it was just literally a bootleg Game Boy system that
Oh yeah.
probably didn't work because it was only like $30, where the average and this in like 1996, where like the average Game Boy like console was like $200. So you already knew that you weren't getting the real thing like from that point. I would be very surprised if anything on that worked, or if he even good for parts at all. If he just ripped it apart and just like modded it, if it would even be any good then.
Well, the problem is it was like most of it was just, you know, it was a really cheap ass console. Like the case was always like really cheap plastic, and the controllers would like stick and were like really bad. And all they're doing is loading up a bunch of friggin' ROMs of like old ass games like onto a chip. So it was probably really cheap to make, and that's why they could sell them for like $30. And they were probably made in like a sweatshop somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure. It probably cost like $5 to make it.
Yeah.
And the lives of 7 children.
Yeah. Who have like friggin' like silicone in their lungs and breathing in chip dust.
Probably.
Or like solder dust or some shit. That's fucked up. That's dark.
They're probably Uyghurs.
Well, I don't know. Were they persecuting them back in those days?
I don't know.
In the early 90s?
We're only finding out about this now, so I wouldn't be
true.
It's been going on for years.
Yeah.
But I do not know. But I didn't know about these weird knockoffs.
Yeah, that's it's weird because they were like official too. It wasn't like they were like a bootleg one, you know. I guess Sega licensed, which there was other consoles that did that too, like the Philips CDI. Like there were like other companies that made Philips CDI games or consoles rather.
So just
they looked really different too. Like there was a JVC version and like all this other stuff.
So it was just a bunch of real legs then.
Yeah.
Or as some people call them, legs. That's very interesting. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Genesis CDX is a very peculiar one because it just looks like somebody like sawed a GameCube in half.
Yeah.
And then
or you know what
and they put like this weird and they put a boomerang attached to it.
Yeah. Or you know what it actually kind of looks like? The way it looks like a freaking Sony Walkman or a Sony Discman rather.
Yeah.
With like a freaking but with a cartridge port. Like fucking like it was like a Sony Discman that had an 8-track tape player attached to it somehow.
Yeah, and like somebody's stupid kid just plugged an Atari controller into it and ruined it.
You know what's funny is that there
was one called the from Iowa, AIWA. I've never heard of them, but
no.
They released something called the CSD GM1, which was a combination Genesis and CD unit built into a boombox.
Oh, that's actually kind of badass.
Yeah, I kind of want to see what the hell this thing looks like. 94. This thing came out. Yeah, I would like to see that.
Apparently the Famicom, which was the original...
Oh my god, that looks exactly like you hope it looks. That is so freaking sweet. The Iowa CD, also known as... That is so freaking badass. I want one.
The Famicom, which was what the Nintendo, the original Nintendo was called when in Japan, also had a disc system, and it used floppy disks apparently.
Huh.
So that's pretty hilarious. I mean, that was kind of the thing, you know, you had like
so So could
the
you play?
Commodore 64
So could you
used-
play Putt Putt Goes to the Moon on that thing?
No, I don't. This was like before. This is like in the 80s, before Putt Putt and all that came out. And I don't think it would even have the processing power to play that. We're talking about like the original Nintendo. It was 8-bit.
Oh man.
It was like the Commodore 64. When that also had floppy disk games too. And apparently that had like a peripheral that you played games on cassette, which was like the weirdest thing ever.
What?
It had like a cassette attachment, and there were actually games for it that somehow played using like cassettes. Yeah, it was very strange.
Cool. Oh man, I can't even find this thing on eBay.
It's probably like one of those things that's just so rare that it's not even like, one person has it in the whole world, or there's like 100 of them sitting in like a friggin' warehouse rotting somewhere.
It's like you got to get that thing on the black market, and then maybe you have to kill a guy to get to like meet the guy who you have to buy it from.
Yeah.
Sounds like a dangerous mission.
Let's see. So Sega also had the 32X, which was an add-on that allowed you to play 32-bit games. And there were certain games. So the 32X was like this giant thing that plugged into the top of the Sega Genesis, like into the console port, and then
This
you
I
had
remember.
that. Yeah, then you had that sitting on top of the plate of the Sega CD. So it was like all these like parasitic freaking like things sucking off the Genesis, basically. And then
But the beautiful thing is you could keep stacking the Sega CDs.
yes,
You keep stacking the Sega 32X, so you could have like 10, 30
yeah, especially with like all these other
the
things.
Genesis.
If you had like a friggin' like Game Genie or something like that, you could throw that in there.
And the
you know?
poor Genesis just like keeled over.
I wonder how much it would take to like make the Genesis just like be like, okay, it's drawing too much power and I'm dead now.
For it to just explode.
Yeah. Apparently there were actually games that you needed both the 32X and the Sega CD to play.
Oh my
also.
god.
So
Picture a father about 150 pounds giving all 32 of his normal weighted sons a piggyback ride at the same time, and that's much what was happening.
Well, I'm wondering if when you had to play both, like if you got the CD and the cartridge in the same case, or you had to like buy them sepaately or some bullshit like that,
Oh, I don't know. You probably.
I would hope it would come with the CD and the cartridge. But who the hell knows?
I wouldn't be surprised if you had to buy it separately.
Now you're thinking like how much like money people were spending back then, because let me see if it says what the Sega CD was worth. Let's see, development. Launch. So initially retailed at 49,000 yen.
Oh crap! The Iwa Mega CD is pretty expensive, actually. It goes for $8,276 brand new. Loose it is just under $3,000.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
okay.
So this is pretty rare.
When it came out in the US, it retailed for $299, the Sega CD. So that's basically the cost of a brand new console. And you had to own a Sega Genesis to do it. So you had to spend, what, $300 or $400 on the Sega Genesis to even be able to play the Sega CD. So we're now talking that you're making basically a $600 to $700 investment just to play, like, Sonic CD, because that really is, like, the only, thing that's worth playing, That's crazy.
This was like, what, 1991 came out?
No, the original, it came out
Or 94?
in 91 in Japan, 92 in North America. So 1992.
All right. The average U.S. salary in 92 was 22,000 about. So put that into perspective.
Let me see if I can find an inflation calculator.
Yeah.
With which would cost. Let's see. If in 1992 I purchased an item for.
And these are just the consoles. We're not even talking about buying the games. This is the console extension.
So
you haven't even bought a game yet.
In North America in 1992, the Sega CD cost $299. In 2022 money, that's $599.17. It's 100% increase.
Wow.
So that's crazy. Spending $600 on something that's just a peripheral for your console. I don't think that would stand nowadays. I don't think people would stand for it. I think no one would buy it.
Well, plus the console, what would the total investment be before you even buy the video games with inflation?
Right. Well, let's see what
might as well.
Let's just say let's do the whole Monty. We're going to go. You need the Sega Genesis, the Sega CD, and the 32X, all the peripherals. All right.
Okay.
Let's see. On the development, let's see, release. So $159 was the 32X when that came out. So let's add that. Where am I? So that would be $318 plus your $600 for that. So now we're up to $918, and that's just on the peripherals. Now, let's see when the Sega Genesis came out, how much that retailed for in the US. Mega Drive. It doesn't say what it retailed for. I'm trying to find what the actual price of the Gen 2 Sega Genesis, just because that was the one that I had and most people had and worked best, I think, with the Sega CD. But let me see if it says anywhere here. I don't see it anywhere.
$189 in 1989.
Okay. All right. So let's just say $200 for the heck of it.
Yeah, with tax, it would be about $200.
Yeah. So now we're up to $900 with those two peripherals. Plus, you would have had to spend $478 because that's what $200 would have been in 1992. Well, that's 92. So, actually, 1989 probably even worse. 1989. Oh, it was about the same. All right. So the same as 1989, and 1992. But in today money, would be $400. So we're talking $1,400 to have all the Sega Genesis peripherals. And now we can see why it failed. Yeah. Even back then, it was a lot of money, and a lot of parents did not want to have to spend this. I mean, imagine you're a kid, you're 7, 8 years old, you go up to your parents and be like, "Oh, I want to get the Sega 32X for Christmas," and they're like, "But you already have a Sega." It's like, but this is new technology. Your parents would be like, "Get the hell out of here! You're not getting a new friggin' console that costs as much as this one,"
Especially then when the kid's like, "No, it's not a console; it's an extension." Then you forget it. The kid's grounded.
Right. They're going to laugh in your face and be like, no.
It's just it just would never work. It would it worked obviously in some points, but definitely every parent who bought a Genesis did not go out and buy all these other items for it. That was just a fact.
Yeah, I mean, I had the Sega CD because I was lucky enough that my uncle was like to play video games, and so he bought it for himself basically, and I just played it while I was there. Otherwise I wouldn't have probably ever been exposed to the Sega CD because I really, at my house I never really had Sega consoles. I was only at my grandmother's house because my uncle liked to play Sega. So at my house we had a Super Nintendo and that was it. And then eventually I got an N64 obviously years later. But at this point I only had the Sega and the Sega CD at my grandmother's, because it was too expensive to buy all that stuff.
we mostly just stuck to Nintendo for most of the time, and then
I think, well, obviously that's why Nintendo won the console war,
right?
You know?
And then we eventually had gotten to a PS2, but I don't remember if then we had eventually gotten a PS2, but I did this before I was in middle school, high school, so it's not like I had a job for my own money. I'm like just counting, when we collectively had it as a household, not like going out and just like purchasing one.
Oh yeah,
wanted it, but we mostly just had Nintendo. And then we had a PS2, and that was that until I decided to buy my own consoles later on. Which even then I haven't bought very many, and if I did, I bought them for very cheap. Like I think somebody had given me an original Xbox. I think I had bought a PS1 for like $50 from somebody who had a PS3 and they like weren't using it anymore, like just things like that. It's not like I spent money on these things, but we never had Sega. I had one friend who she still has all of her Sega stuff.
Yeah.
And that's probably the one person who I played the Sega CD with. I gotta ask her if she actually still has that one, because I know she still has the Genesis for a fact. And my cousin had a Sega, and he had a Genesis and a Super Nintendo, but he also had the Sega Handheld, which we talked about before, which was just
Game Gear.
It killed all of your batteries within an hour, so you had to always have it plugged in all the time.
Yes.
So
or like carry like literally like a friggin' box full of batteries wherever you went.
Yeah, and
it was not practical as a handheld console, because a handheld you want to take with you, and this you had to be like tethered to a wall, with the power pack or whatever. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to actually like play anything.
Right. But yeah, we were
again. That was the genius of the Game Boy, because it was so simple and it used so little battery that you could literally take it anywhere.
Right, but like I said, we weren't really a Sega household, and I only knew like one person who had until the Dreamcast came out. Then I knew like two people who had Dreamcasts.
Yeah,
but it was just one of those things where you just didn't run into a lot of. I mean, at least I can only speak for myself, but me and a lot of the people around me, we didn't really know a lot of Sega people who like.
Yeah.
Like we knew, like obviously we had played Sega from somebody, but it was like everybody just had that one friend who had a Sega game.
Yes,
Sega person had 15 friends who had Nintendo stuff.
Yeah, and it was just the cost was prohibitive for a kid. Like a kid that's maybe getting like a video game or a console for for their birthday or for Christmas. So maybe twice a year if they're lucky, if their family is like well off enough. Most kids weren't. Most kids were like, where I grew up were like, lower middle class to middle class, where like your parents didn't have the money to just buy you a new console or friggin' peripheral every time it came out.
Right,
you're lucky if you got one thing a year.
Right, and I mean in that situation, it wasn't even like people just. It wasn't like Sega was like just known as the second-rate console. It was just parents just. Like Nintendo was more of a household name, but also,
yes, for
the most part, this is one of the things where like the kid just had the choice of the one thing they wanted for Christmas, especially if you had multiple children. They'd say, okay, well, for Christmas, we can either get you like 5 small gifts, or we could get one big gift for the whole family, or maybe you do the one big gift for the whole family and like 2 or 3 little ones for however many children you have.
Yeah.
For the most part, you just kind of give the kid the choice, and then the kid would say, "Well, we want a Nintendo." Okay, you want Nintendo? Yeah, and then there'd be the other kid, and then there'd be another kid who'd say, "Well, I want the Sega instead," and that's just kind of how it went. It was more, and usually it was because, well, this was the thing that I noticed. The children who got the Segas, for the most part, had older siblings. So the older sibling was the one who pushed for the Sega because they knew that the Sega could handle more. Like, they knew more of the technical aspects of the Sega. So
Right.
they were more into that, and so they knew what it could do. Compared to the Nintendo, which just played regular cartridge games. They knew that the Sega could do more things. So the siblings with the children with the older siblings, usually older brothers, got the Segas. This, of course, wasn't always true, but for the most part, if they had an older brother or older sister, they would get they were the ones who had the Sega. But in Nintendo, which was most kids, and by older, I don't mean like a year or two older. I mean a brother that was like several years older, or sister.
Yeah.
That was like at least 3 to 4 years older.
Right.
Where all the kids who had Nintendo games, they were really like, they were either the eldest sibling or or the middle child, and they were all around the same age, so they all wanted Nintendo.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was kind of what it was like. It's an interesting pattern. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but that's how it was in my experience.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of makes sense because the Nintendo, not only was it a cheaper console, it was like you didn't have to buy all these peripherals to actually like play new games, you know. The Nintendo, like the Super Nintendo lifespan was actually pretty long before like the N64 was announced, you know. Yeah. And even after the N64 came out, they were still releasing some games on Super Nintendo, you know. It wasn't like killed off right away. So you had like a much longer lifespan with it, and you didn't have to keep buying these peripherals. And that was the problem with Sega, is they kept pouring money into all these like either newer consoles or peripherals, and they weren't like letting their consoles play out their lifespan. And like this, so they were just like friggin' like hemorrhaging money into new like R&D projects, and I think that's the problem. And then it got to the point where people just couldn't afford to buy all this new stuff. You know, they're like, well, why would I buy all this when I could just buy one Nintendo and that'll last like 5 years, basically.
That too, because like the Sega Genesis was released in the U.S. in August 1989, and then you have the Sega CD, which came out in like 92, like like they were covering it
3 years later.
Yeah, like actually officially December 12th, 1991 in Japan, but
yeah, so 2 years later, really.
Yeah, like they barely gave the console any time to breathe.
Right.
And they were just like, "Oh, hey, here's a new thing." And they were like, "By the way, here's new games for the new thing." But those have to be attached to the Genesis. So it's like, "Wait, so I got to buy the new stuff, but I can't use it unless I have the old stuff that's still kind of new." It was just like they expanded too fast without thinking about what they already have. This is need to count your blessings, folks. This is educational. If we had a sponsor, we'd be able to totally plug it right now, like BetterHelp, which helps you get all the things which helps you cling on to all of the good things and get rid of all of the bad things, so that you're left with all of the good things that you do have. We don't have a sponsorship for BetterHelp. But instead, I'll just tell you, I'm a fan of the Jim Cornette podcast, so you can go to BetterHelp and you could sign up by using the code either Drive or JCE or Experience or one of those things. I don't know what promotion he's doing right now, so I'm giving all of them because we don't have a sponsorship yet. So if there's any money that comes from this into Jim Cornette's pocket, I guess good for you.
Yeah, what the hell? You're plugging someone else's sponsor. That doesn't help us.
Well, we don't have any sponsorship, so I might as well just give it to somebody I like. Until we then get a sponsorship, which I'll...
They're going to get sued by for mentioning them on the show.
Then they'd have to really hate the show.
Well, maybe they do.
We're giving them free advertising. Maybe they do. I don't know. BetterHelp. It's good for you today. Unless you don't make it. Then you need...
Oh my God.
Yeah, there you go. Now we'll never get a sponsorship. I've killed it.
Just burning that bridge there.
Just burning that bridge before we even stepped on it. That's how we like to do it on this show. Just bury every sponsor before we ever get one. That's That's my way. Just burn it down. All of it. I guess that's it. I don't have much else to really say about this damn thing.
No, it was an interesting concept. Had a couple good games, but mostly a lot of not so good games. Pretty mediocre. And it got kind of really overtaken because by the time, like Sony came out with the PlayStation, that was like it, because they really showed what you could do with like a CD, a disc-based system. And the FMV craze kind of died down a little bit. And, more traditional games with like actual graphics became, especially as the graphics improved, like they just became like the thing to do. And, some games, like you had like Resident Evil that still had FMVs for cutscenes. But even then, like that was only like the first one, by the time Resident Evil 2 came out, it was back to like being rendered cutscenes. So,
right. You don't really start to get more FMV stuff until like the Tony Hawk games really came around. That started to kind of popularize it again because getting skateboarding videos, it was cool. It was something like it was something worth like investing the time and money to watch, and it was a small portion of the game. Plus, it was,
and it wasn't like the gimmick that like the whole game was the gimmick. Like Tony Hawk was still a traditional like computer generated graphics game with like a lot of freedom and all that, and the FMVs were just there because it was like a cool video. You didn't have to like play an FMV pretty much,
Right. So, I mean, I think when the PlayStation came around, they ended up actually like taking what the Sega CD had done and just making it better, like just like innovating and like getting it where it needed to be. Except it was Sega, and I mean, like the next big console to really come out, I think, was the Nintendo 64 after the Sega CD. So, really,
well, Sega also had the 32X, and there was some stuff in between there.
Right, but for the most part, there wasn't much that the minute that the second that the N64 came out, it just blew everything away.
Yeah. Yeah, and and then of course Sega kind of kept digging their own hole, and they made the Sega Saturn, which kind of failed, and then the Sega Dreamcast was like the final nail in the coffin. Mm-hmm. And actually, Sega had plans to make.
Which I like the Saturn. The Saturn was a good console.
I like the Saturn too. It had some good games, but it just couldn't compete with the N64. Like the graphics were just not up to par with the N64. They were very polygonal. And the N64 had like these vibrant games and stuff, and it just and Sega actually had plans to make a 32X standalone console, which was going to be called the Sega Neptune, but it fell through because of like how bad the 32X had failed as like a peripheral. So they just kept making mistake after mistake with all these different consoles, and ultimately I think you notice this a lot like when companies are competing. Oftentimes the company that's like just like sits back and like just does their own thing and tries to like just make something as good as possible are the ones that come out on top, and like the ones that are like friggin' crazy and trying to like just outdo their competition constantly over and over again oftentimes fail because they like overextend themselves and spend so much money doing that, research and development. Or spending money on different whatever. I notice it a lot with wrestling companies. So they overspend money on talent and like don't actually develop the talent they have. Because they want to just compete with the other one. And that so it's pretty common like with that. But like the same thing applies here, and that's what Sega was trying to do. Is all they wanted to do was just outcompete. Oh, we got to put more consoles out. Oh, we got to have more peripherals. Look, our consoles do all this stuff. And meanwhile, Nintendo just focused on putting out good games, and they won. Good, inexpensive games that everybody wanted to play, family games.
Right. I mean, I'm like, not to get off topic, but on the Sega Saturn, another thing here was it had two different logos. There was the Western logo. Like they had two separate logos. Mm-hmm. Understand why you would even do that. Like imagine all the marketing costs that you were just like blowing for that and advertising. just because, we need, like, this is the Eastern logo and that's the Western logo, and then somebody's like, well, how many damn logos are there? Well, like why can't we just have one logo? And then one logo gets sent to the wrong place, and then there's a whole thing, and there's shenanigans, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why do we need all this? How much money was blown on, like, crap that you could have been putting into just making the best console possible?
Mm-hmm.
And the best games. Instead, you just didn't do it. But it was just like, this is Sega's continuing pattern that leads to the downfall, because the Saturn comes out in like 94 in Japan, 95 in America, and that's only like 2 to 3 years removed from the Sega CD. The N64 shows up like in late 96, so it like doesn't even do it. So like it doesn't even do anything. The Saturn, it's like barely makes enough money, and then like sexy Nintendo shows up, and it's like, oh god damn it, like now what do we do? So like instead of trying to like fix the Saturn issues, they start working on the Dreamcast, and then they put Dreamcast out in like, what is it, 98? That's like,
yeah, I think it was 98 it came out.
Yeah, 98. You barely give it enough time to even like do anything. And by then, Nintendo by then had been working on the GameCube, or like, you know, and the PS1 comes out.
And you know, the real sad thing too about that is that the Sega Saturn, like you said before, was so ahead of its time. The graphics on Sega Saturn,
the Dreamcast,
right, that's what I meant. Yeah, sorry, the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast was so far ahead of its time that the graphics on the Dreamcast were like as good as, like almost as good as what the GameCube had, and that didn't come out until like 2 or 3 years later. You know, and it's really sad that the Dreamcast failed, because it was a really good console that had a lot of really good games on it and decent graphics, and it's just, you know, it's sad that it failed.
Right, but I'm also going back to like what we were talking about with, you know, with what a parent would say about, you know, a kid coming up to them every 2 years and saying, "Oh, can I get the new Sega? Can I get the new Sega?" And they're like, "You just got a new Sega like 2 years ago. What's wrong with it? What's wrong with that?" Well, they have a new one. Well, they're making a. Well, no. What?
Yeah.
And then every 2 years, it's, "Can I get a new Sega? Can I get a new Sega? Can I get a new Sega? We just bought you the old Sega. You have so many Segas. Why do you need the Segas?" But. Aren't they making the same games? No, they stopped making games for this one. They're only making games for the new one now. Well, what the hell? Money? I don't like. We don't. Do you see the money tree in the backyard? Because we don't have. Because I don't. So, no, you don't get a Sega. And then And then they're talking to somebody. And then they're talking to their coworker, or they're talking to another parent. And they're like, you know, my stupid kid wants another goddamn Sega. And they're like, oh, didn't you just get him a Sega? That's what I said. Well, you should probably get on the Nintendo. We get a Nintendo like every 5 years. Really? And then there you go. You just lost the Sega customer, and Nintendo just picked up a new one, possibly Lifer. So like all that stuff, like you don't think, like when you're a company that's trying to like only care about competition instead of like just making a damn good product that will last for a good amount of time, then like you don't realize how many people, like how many customers you're pissing off in the process. And this isn't just with like video game companies. This is every company.
Yeah.
Every company that tries to expand too quickly, or tries to just like cram more and more product down everybody's throats in a short amount of time because they're only concerned with what's happening in the next 3 months or the next year or the next 6 months. They don't understand how damaging it potentially can be if you overextend yourself and you overspend on too much product. Like you can have too much of a good thing, which most of the time that too much becomes a incrementally larger list of bad things because you weren't paying attention and you were just wasting money on things and you just wanted to crank it out. Where if you just built on the little thing, if you just built on the one thing and focused on your core product and built around that core product over like a 5 to 10 year period, and you had some real vision behind it, you'd get where you need to go. But if you're thinking short term, you're either going to burn out too quickly, and like sure you'll be profitable for like some time, but eventually you're going to like get in the red. And at that point, if you're the CEO who's been like cranking everything out, you're just trying to you just want to pad up your resume so that you look good, and then you get the hell out of there, and the guy after you takes the fall, or gal. So like that, I mean, that's a lot of American companies now. I can't speak to the rest of the world, but I'm sure there's many companies all over the world that just have that they all fall into that same pattern. Mm-hmm. They bankrupt themselves, or they go into like a very dark period. Like Disney, we said this on the Shrek podcast and possibly a few others, but like Michael Eisner saved Disney in one way when he first came in, but then he started overextending and expanding and like doing and trying to like do too much in too short of amount of time with like the cruises and all of like the Disney entertainment centers and all of these like Disney Planet Hollywood knockoff things that they did.
Yeah.
They tried to do so many things that just were not Disney, that it almost killed Disney. Like he was the man who was responsible for saving Disney and almost killing it at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's very like you got like when you're running a company, you really have to understand what your core product is and why people care about that. Otherwise, you're just going to go in the red every time if you're just thinking about slapping your name on everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's my corporate lesson of the day. Like we've said before, most executives are idiots. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm not an executive unless you want to count you and I as the executives of this podcast.
Yeah.
And
we're idiots, so there you go.
I mean, we at least know that we're idiots, so maybe
that's true.
Maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's like the crazy thing where crazy people don't know that they're crazy.
Right.
Like,
yeah, if you know you're going crazy, then you must not be insane.
Yeah, but if you know you're an idiot, then you might not be a moron.
Right.
So take that with a grain of salt, or 12, and make sure you don't spill it on the floor. Because if you do that, you have to throw it over your left shoulder. Otherwise, you won't live to be much older. I am superstitious like that, and it's not because anybody in my family was superstitious, although possibly my grandmother on my father's side probably was. I actually saw that in like a Heckle and Jekyll cartoon from possibly the 40s or 30s, 50s or something like that. On like one of those like VHS tapes of like a collection of random cartoons, and then they just had like one or two like known characters in there. Like
it was always like they had like a couple of Popeye like episodes, then like a bunch of just random shit you never heard of.
Yeah, so I had seen that in like a Heckle and Jekyll thing, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, and I kind of just always stuck by that. I think it was because like I think it was because the damn episode was dealing with superstitions because like a cat or something was trying to get them. Mm-hmm. It was Friday the 13th, so they started using all of the and they found out that the cat was superstitious or whatever was trying to get them. So, so once they noticed that, they started using all of these like they like it was like Thursday, like it was not even like they found out that the cat was superstitious, and they took a calendar and they ripped the pages out until it showed Friday the 13th, and they showed it to the cat. Where they put like a view of the cat. So the cat started getting like really superstitious because it was Friday the 13th. And Heckle and Jekyll start putting all of these like superstitious traps in the way of the cat so that it can't get to them because it buys them more time to set up the next one. because the cat's doing all of these like ridiculous rituals for all of them. Like it won't like it's trying to walk around a ladder, and then there's another ladder, so they're trying to walk around that, and then there's all these other things. They're like they're like trying not to step on like cracks. They're doing all these things, and then eventually you get to the salt thing, and for whatever stupid reason, the salt thing always stuck with me, and I do it to this day. I don't know why.
Yeah, I do it too. I think a lot of people do it.
I never really got into step on the crack, break your mom's back thing. I never did that. I also have never done crack, for the record, which is very.
I would hope so.
Since we're talking about crack, I've never seen nor participated in crack, but I have seen crackheads.
Well, yeah.
I don't know any, thankfully. Or at least to my knowledge, I don't know any. I don't know what happened to the children that I went to elementary school with.
Well, I mean, statistically, one of them is at least probably a crackhead.
Probably. Hopefully not. But chances are one of them is a crackhead. But the long and short of it is, don't spill salt or you'll have to throw it over your shoulder because it's bad luck.
Yep. And on that note,
I
think we can wrap up our Sega CD. I was going to say Sega Genesis.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
Sega CD episode.
I thought you were going to say Sega Crack Rock.
Sega Crack Rock episode. Because you know what? You had to be smoking crack rocks to enjoy the Sega CD. No.
I mean, if
it was okay. It had some okay games, but it just was overall a failure just because, again, what we've already talked about. So, if you could track down some of the fun games, go ahead and do it. Play them. They're fun to play. Sonic CD is often regarded as like one of the best 2D Sonic games. So, it's definitely worth checking out. But overall, just, really not a great thing on Sega's part.
Well, I mean, to bring drugs back into this conversation, the Sega CD it did get developed in the late 80s, so it was possible that cocaine was used during some of these meetings or even engineering sessions.
Quite possibly. I mean, everybody was friggin' on coke in the 80s. Just look at the friggin' 80s wrestling scene.
Oh, yeah. Which crack cocaine, not saying anything, but you can figure it out. But yes, Sega CD. Not the best idea, but not the best execution, but a very good idea that eventually became part of the fabric of modern gaming. It was influential and inspirational in its own right. However, they tried to do too much too quick without understanding that what they had was already good. But that happens. But if you want to pick it up, go right ahead. If you don't, that's totally fine. If you know a friend who still holds on, who still got all their stuff, you should definitely go and just hang out and just catch up one day and just bust out the good old Sega CD and just play a bunch of Sonic. That's been our podcast. This has been Why Does This Exist? Thank you all for sticking with us and hanging out and just listening to us ramble about a bunch of stupid stuff that means nothing in this world. We greatly appreciate you, and we're glad that you want to dedicate your time to us. And I hope that if you're not feeling so great, I hope that we brightened up your day, and I hope that we made you feel good. And I hope that you had a good time and you laughed a little bit. But also, don't do crack. It's bad.
Yeah. Stay away from crack.
Yeah. I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night.